we want everyone to have a team approach, but we want them as individuals to lift as much damn weight as they can. You have to have this balancing act and this kind of melding of the two.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the O-Lift Podcast, where we discuss educational, relevant topics in Olympic weightlifting. My name is Anton Jefferson.
And I'm JP Nicoletta. Welcome to another episode of O-Lift. And today we're going to talk to Mike Gattone, who recently rejoined the USAW as the Assistant Technical Director. I really enjoyed talking to Mike, but once we got started, we just started rolling, and I really didn't get into his background. So for context, Mike has a very long history in the sport. Both as a coach and inside the USAW. He'd previously been high performance director. He has been on the USAW board of directors. He was the competition director, I think, for the 1996 Olympic Games. By 2000, he was the personal coach of Tara Knott. So he's got a great history inside the sport. Outside the sport, I think he's also been an assistant strength coach with the Chicago Bulls, and he spent a few years working for Gatorade before he came back to the USAW. We touch on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
While we're in the conversation, but his new role is an interesting one.
Is there anything that stood out to you in the conversation?
Yeah, in talking about the new role, the assistant technical director role that he has with Piros Dimas, working collaboratively with personal coaches, which it was something I think that we struggled with, our coaches here who put people on international teams. So the way that he's approaching it and the way that the office is approaching it, I thought was really great to get into. And then I sort of surprised him a bit with the question about, do you think weightlifting is a team sport? And he didn't avoid it at all. I mean, he was very genuine in how he answered it, but you can tell how sensitive it was and that he has respect for both sides of it. And he talked through both sides of it, which I really enjoyed that part of the conversation when we got into it.
Definitely. Is it anything that you missed or that you would like to ask him?
You know, I didn't ask when Dimas was officially going to be here. And he is going to be in his role as the technical director for us at the Youth Worlds. And I think Dimas is officially going to be boots on the ground in America sometime in April. The other thing is that maybe I should have spent a little more time just geeking out on weightlifting strategy and things that go on, either in the back room or in the days leading into a major international competition, like the gaming the start list, how they do the final verification of entries and how they select totals to slot people in, like stuff like that I think is cool. And I could have spent all day talking with Mike about it.
Definitely. That's like the topics that you love to write about, man.
Yeah.
So it sounds like to me, it was a great conversation. I definitely enjoyed listening to you guys' interview, and I learned a lot. His hiring process is the same as Susie Sanchez, and we hope to get her on the show in the near future. Before we get into the conversation, I'd like to talk about Black Tape. Again, it's the newest thumb tape on the market. It's tacky, it's flexible, and it lasts your entire workout. Once you remove it, there's no leftover residue on your thumbs. Don't take my word for it. Try it yourself. Go to the oliftmag.com. Click on shop and get Black Tape today.
Remember, for being listeners of the O-Lift podcast, if you use the promo code BLACK10 on your next purchase, you'll have 10% off. Or we thank you for your support of the show and Black Tape, and we hope you enjoy the conversation with Mike. We'll be back with more episodes in the future. All right, Mike, I'm glad we were able to get you just before heading out to Bangkok for the Youth Worlds. I'm assuming by the time we get this aired, you probably will be in Bangkok or just returning. You are now the assistant technical director for the USAW. I think it's a sort of two-pronged job, which we're going to get into. One of the things you're going to be doing is doing a lot of travel and having involvement with the international teams as they go. And your first one is going to be this Youth World team. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing with the team and what the ongoing role is going to be like for you.
Yep, and thanks, JP, for having me on. I really appreciate it, man. This is a lot of fun, and it means a lot that you asked me, so thank you. So, if you think now at the situation in USA Weightlifting, we are very much a decentralized program and system. And, I was talking with, I think, Sean Waxman about this recently, but I think that fits the American psyche and where we're at right now, because we have a lot of great clubs with a lot of great coaches. And, people are invested in the communities where they live. They have significant others, they have jobs, or they just really like their personal coach and their sports med situation and everything
home.
and they're home and they're home. Yeah, thank you.
Just to back up really quick, the decentralized system goes back to last year, and that's sort of tied to when we shut the training center in Colorado. But what is that very simply? I mean, that's basically decentralized system, meaning we're going to allow our elite athletes to stay at
That's
home.
right. That's right.
And the organization is going to support them wherever they are.
That's it in a nutshell. The technical director, Piros Dimas, soon to be, and myself as his assistant, our job, I look at it, the way I've described it, at least in my situation, is sort of a GM type role, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's just somebody who can funnel information on our athletes around the country into a centralized source. For example, this is an acute specific example, the Youth World Championships. I've been with USAW now about 3 weeks. Basically, since I started, I've been in close contact.
In this role.
In this role.
To be clear, you've been involved in the USAW since
about
the black and white.
Yeah, I think so. 1982 was my first meet, believe it or not.
Go ahead, sorry.
It was the Illinois State Weightlifting Championships. Who was the meet director? I bet you can guess. Not Roger Nielsen. That's the only clue I'll give you.
That would have been who I guessed.
And not Mark Manager, so I'll take that out too.
I don't know.
I'll tell you. Mike Hushka.
Hushka, wow.
Anyway, off topic. So, yeah, since I started back in this role as assistant technical director, I've spent a large amount of time talking with personal coaches, and I spoke with Dimas too, and I asked him, like I had my own mind. I basically thought a lot, JP, like if I'm going to a meet with my lifters that I coach or have coached, what's all the information I want to take with me? So of course you want to know what they did in their last competition. Piros asked me for that specifically, and their body weight in their last competition. But we want to have their all-time PRs. We want to have training PRs. We need to have current body weight. I've asked for videos. We're not seeing the athletes, and that's fine. So I think it's fair, since we're supporting the team, to say, guys, this amount of time out, please send us a video of your athlete doing, at least 90%. We're asking for a photo of a scale with a timestamp, for body weight, especially for these lighter
are for
weight
lifters
classes.
who are on the team. So
Correct.
The kids who were on
Yep.
the youth team went through
Yep.
this process.
Yep.
To Bangkok.
And this is what I plan to do from now on. And then putting that all together on a spreadsheet, along with now the entries came out for IWF. So first, just it's kind of easy to see, like, okay, based on our kids' best total, here's where we think they'll finish in that weight class. Of course, I also then looked at how many athletes from each country in the weight class, because that's going to change. A lot of countries put 2 athletes in a weight class, but they're not going to use both of those. So, and then looking to see, like, hey, if we move the athlete to weight class, what would change on their placing. So trying to get as much objective data as possible. So kind of like a GM type role, so that then have a conversation with, Piros and Lance, and in this case there's 2 coaches going along who are the coaches of the number 1 and 2 U.S. lifters, and they're coming as, Team USA coaches and our team leader. So have all of us together and review this data and have everything on the table in a very objective and fair fashion before we get over there.
So go back to some of the conversation that you're having with the home base coach, the personal coaches.
Yeah.
On top of the data that you're asking them to submit, body weight and all that other stuff, are you picking their brains about, is this athlete the nervous type? Is this one very good? Do we tend to go heavy a lot? Like what type of stuff are you extracting, and how do you expect to use that?
Yeah, that's great. That's a really good question. I have a tab which is notes. Now, being a youth level especially, but I think this will always be the case with the United States, which is great. There's going to be a lot of personal coaches there. And so, that helps, obviously, because if a personal coach is there, we want them to kind of, be in charge in the weight room, in the warm-up room, because they're the one with that athlete all the time. But still in all, yeah, I want us, even in the case where there is a personal coach, the night or two before, we're going to sit down and decide on attempts, If you think you have a shot at a record or a PR, let's talk about that now. I don't want us getting in some kind of argument or a dispute in the warm-up room, on the clock, in front of a kid, in front of an athlete, any of our athletes. Let's talk it out now so that if we think there's going to be a discrepancy, we have that on the table. So that's first and foremost that I told everybody that, because I think, all of a sudden you've been doing this for a couple of years and you got one of the top kids, and then all of a sudden here's this announcement, oh, Dimas and Gattone. And so first thing I want to do is lay it out like, hey man, like dumbest thing that anybody could do would be come between you and your athlete,
Yeah, and there were problems in the past. I mean, there were issues that have occurred.
so.
I don't know if there are any major blowouts, but there were definitely disagreements.
That's right.
My understanding is that Piros has decision-making.
That's right.
He ultimately makes the call, but it'll be Piros' personal coach, and will it be one of the named coaches? So are you going to be in the back for sessions, or?
That's the other thing I want to work on when we get there, not after weigh-ins when we're sitting there deciding who's got what I've told everybody is, I want the athlete to have who they're most comfortable with.
Yeah.
And usually, if there's one personal coach there and then maybe our named U.S. coach and then maybe Piros or I, or, the named U.S. coach may say, hey, that's fine. I'll take a break on this one, and you and Dimas do it. So exactly what you're saying is what I want to make sure. I think the role of performance for these kids is going to be much better, and the personal coaches is going to be much better if we take out stress the day of the competition. And that means let's sit and make our decisions now. Even if we're gonna have a disagreement about something, we're having it now. Let's talk it out. So the way I look at it, I've been a coach. I still coach some athletes, in the evening, and I understand the role of the personal coach with their athlete. And in the United States, this is the way we built our team. So I think we have to do everything we can to be a service to the personal coaches. But, there's times when someone has to put their foot down and make a decision. Our main goal is to score points at this meet for Youth Olympic Games, Just like at World Championships, that's got to be our main goal, trying to maximize points for the Olympic Games. So, sometimes with a personal coach or an athlete, you may meet, hey, let me get that 6 kilo jump for a PR. And that may be where at least having a discussion beforehand where we go, hold on a second. Let's look at this data you gave me. Like, here's their best training snatch. Here's what they made at their last meet. Is that really a smart decision? So that's what I think the role of Piros and I would be beforehand, and then maybe to give that reminder in the warm-up room. But
I like the comment that we should look at what we're doing as a service to the coach as necessarily being combative or against it. But a sidebar question that I would have, the debate often comes up now, weightlifting is a team sport.
Mm-hmm.
In your eyes, do you see weightlifting as a team sport or is it an individual sport?
That's really tough, because in my role, I have to treat this as a team sport. And it is, in this case, definitely a team sport. I was personal coach of Tara, okay, like, our who did pretty good for herself, and she was at the Olympic Training Center for most of her career. I'm trying to cast my brain back to when I was going to Olympic trials with her or a national event with her. Well, national events different obviously, but at these world events, I think we need to have a mix, JP, like to have people say, like, we got each other's backs. It's not so much like it's about me. Screw you, JP. I'm going to take the jumps I want, and I don't care. We can't do that.
Right. We have gotten buy-in on that. Certainly last year at Pan Am's, when everybody knew what needed to be done to get our spot at the Olympics, I think that was one of the themes that rang true from everybody on that team.
That's right.
I hear you. It is a tough question. I mean, is it a team sport or not? And, it's the ultimate act of individual greatness, right? But at the same time, how it's set up, it sort of makes it hard to draw the distinction between the two sometimes. But in your role, like you said, it's a tough line to navigate, and having respect for those personal coaches is a big thing.
No doubt. When it comes down to it, the great thing about us, this sport, it's just so bloody objective. So, I mean, if you lift the big weights, it's going to take care of itself. It really is. So we want everyone to have a team approach, but we want them as individuals to lift as much damn weight as they can. You have to have this balancing act and this kind of melding of the two, you know? So are you going to hold somebody back, quote unquote? I hope that's never going to be the case, you know? I just think that you're a guy who, you know, I would love to be with in a warm-up room and talk to you about competition, you know? And I just think, like, I don't think any of our personal coaches would do this, but, you know, it's a growing sport, and you'd hate to see somebody like the kid's trucking along and makes their first 2 attempts, and they took 2 or 3 kilo jumps, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, let's take an 8 kilo jump, and we could sneak in here for, you know, I'm going to get a new PR total or something. So it's just kind of having a little bit of a blend of logic and reason on the top of, yeah, dude, I want you to lift as much weight as possible.
All right, so that's what you're going to be doing. I think let's call that the competition.
That's the competition, and leading up to it, trying to get that information so we're all on the same page. We're all able to work together on this. Yes, so that's the assistant technical director role. The other part of it is we are going to try to come together a couple times a year for various camps. Now it's going to change by level. You know, like it's kind of having youth kids or junior kids together for a camp, I think, is different than having seniors who are, again, comfortable in their homes and with their coaches together for a camp, you know. So, but part of my role, again, will be helping organize those camps, finding places to do it. I'm trying to think in terms, I've already been asked, for example, to start to think about a world team camp, and like my proposal is not so much a training camp where we're going to come in and throw some crazy workout at people, but a couple days together where the team kind of is working together. The personal coaches all come. They're with Pyros, very, very important. And maybe we're asking people, hey, let's go up one day and do a 90% or so snatch. If you want to go heavy, go for it. And another day, maybe a 90% or so clean and jerk. And then you go home again, you know. So no big change in their lives. But again, to have some accountability, you know, to the folks paying the bills and saying we want to try to maximize our team performance. We need to at least be together for some period of time so that we can get a look at people. So there's some of this camp activity that will fall on my plate as well.
All right, so that's the camps. And then I think one of the things that we were talking about when we had a chance, we basically said hello to each other outside of the venue in Kansas City at the National Juniors, and like a half an hour later, we still had left there. And one of the things that you were talking about was getting into recruitment strategy and leveraging your relationship base inside the strength and conditioning world. Yeah. So what are you looking to do there? And what are some of the things that you think we can maybe pull away from other places in terms of talent?
Yeah, it's a kind of an interesting and sort of fun part of the job so far. I, like a lot of weightlifting coaches, it was very hard to make a living as a weightlifting coach, but I wanted to, you know, my goal was to be a coach for a living, and so I spent a lot of time in the strength and conditioning world as well. I worked for Al Vermeil with the Bulls for 4 years, and then in my last, although it was a corporate job I had with Gatorade, I was essentially in a relationship role with strength coaches and athletic trainers and sports dietitians, you know, around the country at the schools and pro teams that they partnered with. So I've been blessed to build a lot of relationships with folks, and always been one of those guys who loves to just call somebody and shoot the ball on training, you know, and I think that's how coaches are. So Phil has looked at a lot of other NGBs, have had like these combines, and, you know, you look at like bobsled, right, where they invite track and field athletes or guys from NASCAR pit crews and things like that.
I've had a couple of weightlifters wind up in one of those.
Yeah, okay. So Susie Sanchez is doing some work sort of on that end. So that would be like cast a big net and try to catch some people. And then I think my end is, if you look at, you know, Sarah Robles was a thrower, and, you know, Terranat was a college soccer player. Now, they both came to us. You know, there was no active recruitment of them, but, you know, you would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be surprised, like how many beers I've had at NSCA conferences and CSCCA conferences, talking with strength coaches about, a lot of them have interest in our sport. it's very objective, and it's when you're a strength coach, it's sometimes hard to have, a goal in the end when you're preparing someone for a team game season. For us, it's great, and it resonates in a strength coach's mind, like, oh yeah, it's just kind of a classic progressive resistance program, and you start someone at A and try to get them to B. And a lot of them like weightlifting and are interested in it. And so one of my roles is now to start to dive into this Rolodex. And, I talked to a strength coach at a big ACC school this morning. And the idea is like, here's what we're trying to do. If you see kids that are coming to their senior year, you're not going to get Ezekiel Elliott from Ohio State. That's
Right.
good. But some of these schools have absolute animals, as you know, and sometimes the athletes who are the best in the weight room maybe are lacking a little bit of the size maybe to go to the next level, or they're just in a sport like Tara was, where there is no next level if you
Next
don't
level,
make,
yeah.
she didn't make the national soccer team, but she wanted to keep trying to compete. So
And you're 22 years old and you're graduating from college. What's next?
that's it. So mine is it really that this part on my deal is calling coaches. I'm working a lot with coaches, but also individual athletes, which I'll tell you about in a sec. But calling coaches, explaining our program, asking them, do you have someone you can recommend? Can I contact them? Can we, see where the kid's going after school? I mean, are they going to move to Queens, then I'm going to send them to you for training. It's not even like I'm going to be the person coaching them, or
Right.
I'm trying to grab them and send them to Colorado Springs or something, because we don't have that. So it's actually, I really love it as a guy, coaching out in the field, that it's another way for me to, or for us, USA Weightlifting, to sort of help build our clubs, because a kid tells you I live X place, maybe you talk to them, get a little feel for their mentality, and then you go, okay, I think they would fit well with this person. You make the intro, and you set up some initial appointments, and you roll from there. So
One of the things that I liked about what you're saying there is that when you use Sarah and Tara as examples, I mean, they found weightlifting.
They did.
However it happened, whatever it may be, they found weightlifting. And what's new, not necessarily ingenious. I mean, it's not anything that's never been heard of before, but we've never done it before. The idea of proactively going out and finding talent and trying to even place them close to home. I mean, I think part of this started with the idea that Phil had a couple of years ago. It was like 2015. I was talking to him at the National Juniors, and he had pointed out like 5 or 6 kids that were competing at National Juniors who he had called based on finding their names in like high school clean and jerk contests or something.
Yeah. And CrossFit, I think he beat the bushes on some youth CrossFit stuff too.
Right. And the whole point is that while we've had this nice growth, and while we've experienced a phase of new people finding us and coming into us, instead of just waiting for things to start to decline, you guys have made a decision to go out and get in front of people now before that decline occurs, if it ever does. Hopefully it doesn't.
Yeah.
But that proactive step is really good. One thing I'd add on behind it, though, is it's fun to find these people. It's going to be work to do it. But, I know 2 or 3 good coaches in Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
What if you do locate a talented softball player who's coming out of school, and she's going to be in Phoenix?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about that phone call? Like, how are you going to place these people?
Bro.
I mean, that's
that one's going to be because also guys like you and I, we've been in this sport for 30 years. And so I have this thing in my mind that I love weightlifting, and I want to be able to go to national championships and be happy about everybody I see too. And I mean, maybe that's a Pollyanna attitude, but I hear you, because it's hard. You don't want to tick somebody off and say, why'd you pick them and not me? Part of me is going to cop out and say I'm going to cross that bridge a little bit as I come to it.
Sure.
I'm going to, a great example is LA or Phoenix or,
right.
Any of our big areas. There's a lot of great coaches there and great clubs, Part of it, I think you have a little not a cop-out, a little bit of logic. If you live in a big metro area, that, okay, there's, 3 great clubs or 4 great clubs in Phoenix, let's say. But if the athlete's in Chandler, you may automatically kind of knock out a club that's on I don't even know if I know my Phoenix geography well, but let's say you go, so-and-so's club is an hour, it's on the very north side of the metro area, so maybe that one's not realistic. And that, I think that's a big case in LA, you know, such a big and congested city. So Chicago's a good example. You know, I coach in the evenings a couple nights a week at a place that's the far north suburbs. So if somebody was on the, you know, northwest Indiana or, you know, southeast suburbs of Chicagoland area, you know,
not coming up to you.
No, there's plenty of places in between where you could say, let's get you with this person. So it'll be a good problem to have, I think, if we get so many that have to make that decision. But the real challenge, I think, is going to be if you get, I'm talking to a person right now that, I mean, I saw on Facebook do a 215 power clean, and you know, not great form, and I don't know if the person can overhead squat or even front squat with their elbows up yet. But that's the kind of person, and I've conversed with this person, and they're very interested. After I get back from Bangkok, I'm going to go meet with the person, you know, and they live in a town in northern Wisconsin, and there's not necessarily a weightlifting person that I know in that area. So there's going to be some times when we may have to be creative and maybe use our coaching education side, and maybe it's a chance to mentor a young, great person at a CrossFit or something and say, look, you're going to have a chance to get behind a really cool project here, but I want you to work with us, you know, and then maybe we could do some video things, or we could hook them up with a mentor coach, you know, like that would be another idea to say, you're going to be hooked up with so-and-so as your mentor coach, and maybe once a month we get that mentor in there to do a workout with them. So that's the kind of way I would see it going. You know, and we only have to find one or two to try to knock our needle up a little bit, but hopefully it's something that can be interesting and we can see some fruit come from.
So the Nationals are back in Chicago. You ran it once before in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
right?
actually, I ran. I had Nationals in Peoria once in 1994, right before I moved to Atlanta, and then. And then say it with a smile on your voice. No. And then you remember it was in Peoria again in 2010 when I was high performance director. I sort of became the de facto, just because it was a local person. That was just kind of given to a convention visitors bureau. And then, Chicago 2009 was actually the Pan Am Championships.
Right.
And that was part of the Chicago 2016 process of trying to get the bid here. And then I did Chicago 2007. That was at the Schaumburg. So I've done a few senior nationals. And this one is going to be interesting, JP, because I'm really not the meet director or even the main local contact. I'm part of sort of the local committee, but I'll be there for USAW, and I'm going to be coaching a couple athletes and then just basically working with Piros and doing whatever Phil asked me to do. So, but looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. It's a nice venue and should be a good meet. Thanks, buddy. We're going for pizza, I think, right? Then we talk about
Absolutely.
A pizza debate. We're going to try to rectify, I think.
A deep dish versus real New York style
That's right.
pizza.
I think Waxman is going to be involved in that because he kind of started the chirp on this. So we'll have to organize some event for this. So.
Oh, I think we can make that happen.
All right, man.
Good luck with your trip to Bangkok and
thank you,
to
sir.
all of Team USA. Good
Thanks
luck with the new
JP.
role, and I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks at Nationals.
If anybody out there thinks they know a studly athlete of some kind that we should take a look at too, please reach out to me, man. You could email me at USA Weightlifting or message me on Facebook. There's a lot of ways to find me, so I'd appreciate it.